Focus. Focus. You got it? You focused? Okay, go. So tonight is wiring night. I've got the whole car to do, basically. I need to build a engine wiring harness and then integrate that engine wiring harness into the factory IS300 harness. There's some connectors under the hood. My biggest problem is that my ECU before was sitting under the hood but not in a box. So I just had it wrapped in plastic bags and taped up so it wouldn't get wet. Terrible. It made the engine bay look terrible. It wasn't clean at all. I was always worried that it was going to get water in the ECU. So no longer. I'm going to take the time now and move the ECU under the dashboard. And I've got my buddy Travis coming to help me. He's the wiring guru. Not that I'm not. I love wiring and stuff, but having two hands and two minds makes things go a lot better. Travis is really good at getting the relays set up and figuring out the pins on the factory harness, stuff like that I just hate doing and I'm not very good at. So I'm going to be working on getting the wiring harness laid out, the lengths right, and then heat shrinking it all together and making it look clean and fit really good in the engine bay. What I've done here is this is the front office of my shop, and so I moved the chairs out of the way, cleaned the floor, vacuumed it, and got it all ready so I can lay out everything in here and I can be in the warm because it's snowing outside. Let me show you guys. That's what we're dealing with, snow. I'd rather be inside in the warm shop with the TV so I can watch other guys' YouTube videos and see if the other guys on this trip are further along than I am or not. And then I can just chill, listen to music, watch YouTube, and just work away. That's the best thing when I'm doing wiring. When I built the harness for my last car, I essentially did the exact same thing I'm about to do now. I started watching Narcos, binge watching till like 5 a.m. every night, working on my harness. And if you guys have watched Narcos, you know that it's all in Spanish, and I don't speak Spanish or understand it. So I essentially had to read the entire show. So I got almost nothing done. Between each 1 hour episode, I'd get like maybe 5 or 10 minutes worth of wiring done. So that was a bad idea. So I need to watch something that I don't have to pay as much attention to. Alright guys, here's my wiring setup. I've got some connectors, multi-pin connectors. These are the pins that I've got, ECU master pins and other pins and terminals. That's a heat shrink label printer, so I can label each individual component. Stacks and stacks of this loom in different colors, different sizes. My trusty crimpers, strippers, tape, solder, possibly. I've kind of gotten away from solder, but there might be an instance where I might need it. The trusty heat shrink melter. This time I'm using the EMU Black. I've mainly been using the EMU Classic until now, but I'm going to try the Black for a few different reasons. This is the harness. I've already stripped it down. Calculating, compute. Ready. So I have to add 3 coil outputs to this harness. This is a VVTI JZ harness, which has a wasted spark. So normally we have 1, 2, 3 coils, and then it shares companion cylinders between those 3 coils. Well, we want sequential spark, which means we need 6 individual coil signals and powers and grounds. So I have to modify this harness to have 6 signal wires, 6 power wires, and then 6 grounds. The powers and the grounds can be jumped together. So kind of like you see in here, I call this the squid connector. The squid junction. All these powers come together and are spliced together in one spot. They do that same thing with grounds. Here's the ground squid. So basically I can take my powers and grounds from here and then tie them into one of the wires that's already coming off of here. We have a lot of extra powers and grounds in this harness from other sensors that I've taken out. So for example, when I took this apart, let me find one of them. Where is it? Oh, this white one. Or this black-white. This goes, it comes from this squid connector, which is actually heavy gauge power, which already feeds the coils. This was a spare one that I think went to the igniter, which we no longer need. And this I have labeled as coil power. So that means I can use this to power the coils. Also, we've already got power to the coils for 3 of them, so I can junction off of those. And then I just need to run a ground wire back to the squid connector, or the squid junction, in order to ground the coils. So that's what I'm going to do now. So since I'm not building it on the car necessarily, I'm going to go out in the shop and take a measurement of how far away the coils are from each other, so I can get an idea of how to build that coil harness with 6 individual coils. Let's go have a look. So I've never used these Audi coils before, but we have done it on a customer car, and we did it on Travis's car. So this is the first time for me, but the nice thing about them is the way they mount in there. They literally just clip onto the spark plug and they stay pretty good. The other ones I had were the Toyota Yaris or Toyota Sienna, or just the Toyota coils in general, and they were really floppy. I didn't build a bracket for them. I literally just used the cover to hold the coils down, and it worked pretty well, but these mount so much better without any brackets or anything. So what I need to do is take basically a measurement from the center of each coil, so I know the distance between my connectors. I'll leave a little bit of slack, but I want these to tuck really nicely and be able to tuck the harness under there, so all the wiring goes back straight to the back, and then I can just turn it out and go into the main harness. Center to center is 3.5. What if I were to say 4 inches? That would give us a little bit of excess for the wiring. I'm going to go with 4 inches between those. Right there. Yeah, 4 inches should be good. Maybe a little over 4. Okay, that's the info I needed. So now I'm going to pull these connectors off. They're really hard to get off once you clip them on, so luckily we didn't clip these on. We just kind of set them on there. It's kind of a one and done type of deal. These coils and connectors I got off Amazon, so I know they're super cheap replicas, so I really hope that they don't fail on me. But for this road trip, I'm bringing 6 extra coils in case we do have any failures, and they're pretty much available at every Audi dealer across the country. I looked up a wiring pinout for these Volkswagen Audi coils. I'm going to shrink in each individual one like this with this loom. So I got to do this one and then connect that and then slide the shrink back over that way. And then I'm going to tuck it, fold everything against this, shrink it that way so it'll be shrunk up to here, and it'll be loomed out to here, and then this will be able to plug into the other coil. And I'll just keep doing that down the line with all those. So here's the completed harness. Well, not the harness. This is just the coil harness. We've got power and ground right there, and then we've got the 6 signal wires going out to the ECU. This took me about 4 hours. I need to graft it into that, finish the rest of that, but what I'm going to do now is go fit this on the car and see how it lines up. Alright, hopefully my lengths are right. I came up with about 5 inches between each connector, which left me a little bit of slack. I'm going to have to twist these this way. That's actually nice. The extra inch that I put, because these measured out at 4 inches center to center, I did 5 inches. It actually puts the wiring harness down between each coil, which kind of sucks because I made it look really nice and you won't be able to see it, but I'm going to run a cover anyways. And that back one's going to be hard. I'm going to have to move all that crap and tuck the harness back behind it, but it's actually kind of nice the way it goes down there between coils. So this is the injector harness before shrinking. Those are the 6 injector signal wires, and then there's 1 power wire. And then what I did is this is an extra power wire, a 12-volt signal. I just put it out. It's gonna come out of the heat shrink right there, and I can tuck it under the manifold or use it for something. It doesn't have a purpose yet, but it is 12 volts, so it might come in handy in the future. This is another 12 volt that goes to the alternator center pin. So that one I just brought out of the heat shrink in injector 1, and it's going to go up and over the front of the engine and then down to the alternator. This didn't take me very long. This was probably about an hour's worth of work to get it all set up like this, get the lengths right, bend the wires, D-pin. I put tape around there, so now it's time for me to shrink it. I'm going to heat shrink all that together. Alright, so my man Travis rolled through, the wiring guru. We're doing, this is the external sensors, which is, what is it, fuel pressure?
Oil pressure and oil temp.
Oil pressure, oil temp.
Intake air temp.
And intake air temp, which is one that should be in the harness, but I forgot to do it because it was late when I was doing it. Anyways, we won't talk about that. Thanks for bringing that up, Trav. We have to run this harness through the hole down there because this chassis was never designed to have the ECU mounted under the dash. So we have to find a way to get all those wires through there, and that's the best spot we have. But if you can see there's not a giant hole, so we kind of have to cut that boot, slip everything through there, and keep it sealed. But there's also not a whole lot of wires going through there, so that's what I'm working on. I cleared out a bunch of modules from under the dash that we didn't need, like traction control, ABS, daytime running lights. That whole mess of modules right there was up under the dashboard. And we got all that removed so we can mount the EMU black under there. It's nice because the new ECUs are pretty small compared to the older ones, so it makes mounting them nicer. I remember when they first came out with the small ones, I'm like, who cares what the size is? But now that I'm actually mounting it under the dashboard, I realize how important it is to have a small compact ECU. So this is the underside. There's a clutch pedal for reference, so we got to put it somewhere up in that area. And hopefully those wires will be able to reach through and be long enough. You see they're not super long. Focus, focus, focus. There we go. They're not super long, so I hope they can make that bend through there and still be long enough to reach the ECU. Here's the completed harness. That is for ignition coils, and then this is what goes under the intake manifold to the fuel rail. All the injectors and cam sensor that goes up and over to the alternator, and the intake air temp sensor, coolant temp sensor, and the crank sensor. That's the knock sensor. This is a sub harness that Travis built with a connector that goes through the manifold down to the auxiliary sensors, fuel and oil temp and oil pressure. And this is the ECU side. So that's going to run under the dash. Still need to crimp all these pins to the ECU master connector. And yeah, it's a nice looking piece. That was a lot of work, but hopefully there's no issues. Hopefully we plug it in, calibrate the ECU, and it starts right up. So we got 6 days left. Travis came to help me out with the wiring harness, and it turned out super sick. Well, we probably put in like 4 or 5 hours today.
Yeah.
Yeah, getting the harness set up. We got the harness basically pushed through the firewall in that small spot I was talking about earlier. And because we still have to crimp all the terminals onto the end of the harness. I can crimp them on in there and then mount the ECU onto the dash. The connectors that go to the EMU black are too large to fit through the firewall connector in there. So basically we push the harness through, crimp all those terminals on, and then install them into the connector, and then the harness is basically married to the car at that point, unless I were to go back through it and actually pull the terminals out of the connector to get it back through the firewall. Anyways, so I think I'm gonna call it a night, but tomorrow I'm gonna crimp all those terminals on and hopefully get the car to crank over and start. I think I got a bass tune that'll work. All my tunes are for the EMU Classic, but I think there's a way to convert it. Do you know if you can convert the Classic to black?
I'm poor. I've got Classic.
I remember reading about it, but it's like, I don't care. I'm never going to buy a black, and now, yeah, information that was not well stored. So thanks for your help, Travis. Sorry, I wasn't ready.
This is awful.
It's bad. It's bad. And I got a big mess to clean up tomorrow. But it was worth it. The harness looks really sick. Yep, so this is the end of my vlog for the last couple days. I haven't done, it's not going to be a one-day vlog, but stay tuned because I got a lot more work to do before the trip coming up and all the preparation for that. So thanks for watching. You see that?
I like
with
that.
the thing?
I like that. You gotta throw that, leave the black screen in there and let's talk.